Good evening, members. I'm just going to read out the following statement on virtual meetings on behalf of the Vice Chair. I would like to welcome everyone to this meeting, which is being held virtually and in accordance with the Council's rules for virtual meetings, which reflect the recently published government guidelines. The meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be available to view after the meeting is finished. Councillors who sit on this committee are identified by name on the screen, and I will introduce the officers by name before they address the committee. Councillors are reminded that although this meeting is being held remotely, they are regarded as being present in a meeting of the Council, and they should observe the normal rules of behaviour under the Member Code of Conduct and not allow members of their household to distract them during the course of the meeting. Can members ensure that their mobile phones are now switched off or are on silent? Members of the committee will turn on their video link during the meeting and keep their microphones muted unless they have been invited to speak by the chair. Members are reminded that if they switch off their video link or move away from the camera, they will be treated as leaving the meeting and will not be able to take part in any vote taken on the item under discussion. Members can indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand or using the function, and should only speak when the chair invites them to do so. The officers present will only switch on their video link on during the item they are presenting or where they wish to be invited to speak. The chair will confirm the name of any visiting speaker at the appropriate time in the agenda who will address the committee by audio link. Councillors should declare that they are leaving the meeting and switch off their video link if they have a disclosable pecuniary interest or other personal interest in an item on the agenda. They can switch on their video link when the next agenda item is called. Voting will be taken by a roll call and the recommendation will be confirmed before the voting begins. Can each member indicate whether they are for or against the recommendation or whether they wish to abstain? Hopefully we will not have any IT problems, but can I remind councillors that if their connection is lost, they should immediately advise the Democratic Support Officer and use their meeting link to access the meeting again.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. I think we've now got Councillor Leeks. Councillor Leeks, can you hear me? Can we hear you? David, you're muted. You need to unmute yourself. Okay. Have we lost Councillor Leeks? Yeah.
I think he was having difficulties connecting to sound. He might be there now.
David, are you okay now? Unfortunately, I can't hear him. Can anybody else hear him?
No.
David, can you unmute yourself?
I think he's having difficulties connecting to his sound system.
Can Councillor Faulkner carry on with the first
Ellie,
part?
shall I carry on until Councillor Leeks has managed to resolve?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's carry on with the meeting then. Okay, so the first item, apologies for absence and any substitutions. Well, Ellie, have we got any of those?
No, we haven't.
Oh, okay. Any declarations of interest? Nope. Now, urgent matters. There was one matter I wondered if we were going to take it under urgent matters, which under the circumstances, perhaps we should leave, and that is at the last meeting. I said I would stand down as vice chairman because I'd already got in total 3 of them. Would now be appropriate, Ellie, to nominate a replacement at the end of the meeting, for the end of the meeting?
Yes, yeah, we can do
Okay.
it. It matters.
Well, as a standing down vice chair, I'd like to nominate Councillor Jenny Vo. Are we all in favour?
Yeah, in favour.
Yep. Okay, welcome, Jenny, as vice
Thank you.
chair at the end. Yeah. Okay. Minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of February 2020. Are there any comments as regards their accuracy? Or can
You
we
hear me,
take
yeah?
them as read?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take those as read. So on to item 5, which is the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Policy Review. So I'll hand over to presumably Sophie, or is it Rob that's going to do the introduction to that?
Well, the good or bad news is that officers are obviously no better adept with the technology than the councillors are. So Sophie is struggling to get in. So it looks like I've been promoted to leading this particular piece, for which I apologise. Anyway, I'll just push through with this one. Firstly, apologies for some of the numbering at the bottom of the pages. They're a little bit overprinted in a few locations, but if you'd like to turn to pages 10 and 11, please. Okay, we all good?
Yep.
Marvelous. Right. So the reason that we have this in front of you today, councillors, is because a few months ago we had a revised guidance from the Department for Transport regarding standards for taxi drivers. Now, this has been a bit of a long time coming, shall we say, but it arrived in the middle of COVID. What we're looking to do is to bring the policy that is already in existence introduce into it the items that the DFT wishes to introduce. Now, we're taking the opportunity to do a couple of other things as well, but we'll focus on the DFT changes. These are not mandatory. Let me stress that these are guidance. However, there is a very heavy pressure on us to agree to these, and we are being checked up on by the DFT come January as to how we are getting on with implementing these changes. So whilst they can't apply any pressure to make us do them, there is a great deal of pressure for us and all other authorities across the country to conform and introduce these new standards. And I suspect we would be in a difficult position were we not to introduce them. So working off page 11, I just want to go down through these reasonably quickly because we've got a very full agenda tonight. So as you can see in the nice blue and white boxes there, the first one is perhaps one of the more onerous ones, which is to shift to a 6-monthly check of the DBS for all drivers. Now, previously, that just couldn't have happened because the process was very paper-based and laborious. Now, this can be done in a matter of seconds online, provided the drivers have signed up to what's called the update service. Now, we've talked about the update service before, but this is really going to push it through. We've been stressing to drivers that they should be signing up to the update service. It doesn't cost them any more than it would do to have their DBS check every 3 years. And it means that we can check their DBS at the drop of a hat, quite frankly. So we will be setting up an electronic system to check the drivers every 6 months, and that would allow us to hopefully pick up any issues straight away. So that's going to be a change, and we will obviously need to get those that aren't on the update system onto the update system. Any questions on that or concerns before I go on?
Am I in yet?
You're in, David.
Oh, good heavens. This is because I've been locked out of my other one. So I'm right, sorry. Carry on, Graham, for a
Okay.
moment.
Anybody else? No.
Rob,
Okay.
just to let you know that I've dialed in.
Yeah, I could see your number in the bottom corner there, Soph. I'll continue to push on, and you can interject when I go wrong.
Okay.
Okay. There's also a requirement for licensees to self-report. We've always had that, but now there is a legal time, or not legal, but a recommended time frame for that. So that's no significant change. We've got some more details on decision making. A bit more information on criminal checks. The next one is another newie, so a basic disclosure on the DBS for the vehicle proprietor. Okay, so previously it was possible to own a whole fleet of hackney carriages or vehicles without any legal checks being done on you, because you're not the driver. So the emphasis was very much on that, whereas now this looks at ownership of vehicles, primarily a money laundering constraint here to ensure that there aren't dodgy people in the background. Councillor Putty.
Thank you, and thank you, Chairman. Seeing is at 4.35, clarification on what is needed for overseas criminal checks.
Yep.
How it is, this one is going to be carried out.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, we already carry out checks anyway. As I say, a lot of these are not big changes for us. All we need to make sure is that some places we tweak the wording, slight change in procedure to ensure we meet the DFT standard.
Rob, if I may, Councillor Putty, what we've had previously is applicants from overseas have been directed to their own embassies to get what are called certificates of good conduct. That has been a very intermittent process. It's taken quite a long time. The Home Office has now come out with specific guidance for each country on how to apply for an overseas criminal records check, which we haven't had previously. So that guidance will be made available to our applicants.
Okay, thank you, Soph. So next one, operator DBS checks and staff DBS checks. So again, this is looking at tightening things up. So again, previously you could own a private hire company and not necessarily have to disclose your criminal record. And also those people who worked for you wouldn't be known to us particularly. So those of you who've had Jim Button's training will know that obviously one of his big concerns was always that you book in the days before COVID, when people went abroad for their holidays, you would sort of book your trip out to Spain for 2 weeks, and the taxi company would know that you had a departure date because they were taking you to the airport, and they would know that you had a return date when they were picking you back up from the airport. So ostensibly they would have a fairly good idea that you were away from your home at that point in time. And potentially that's useful information for people of a criminal persuasion. And that those people who had that information were those people who were actually perhaps in fairly low grade jobs, just taking the phone calls, managing the bookings. But now the requirement is that all staff are DBS checked, albeit to the basic level rather than the enhanced one. Sophie. Oh, you just flashed up there. Okay, and as part of also the tightening for the private hire, there is now a longer list of data that they need to record. Now, again, in previous years, that was literally done with pen, paper and a book. Nowadays, all private hire operators run rather swift and advanced computer monitoring systems, which record a whole load of data. So this additional data gathering and requirement isn't particularly onerous on them because it's part of that would normally be picked up by the computer system. So again, it just reflects the advances in modern technology as compared to what was originally done in 1976, for those of you who remember that. We've moved forward a little for there. They're also looking to encourage us to introduce a penalty points system. That's going to be rather more exciting. I'll come back to the penalty point system in a moment, because that's something that we've been looking to do as well. Details of common law police disclosure. So in the good old days when I started licensing, there was a requirement that if the police picked up anybody who was a taxi driver, that they would disclose that to the local authority. They were very bad at that. Now we have the common law disclosure regulations, which are in a much broader term, but sit with the police DBS units. And it seems to have settled down now after a little bit of bedding in time. But basically, it requires the police to let us know if they pick a taxi driver up. I can safely say that over the last few weeks, we've had a few of those, and the disclosure system seems to be working well. Sophie, any comments on that?
Rob,
Oh,
I had
sorry,
my
Councillor.
hand up. I don't know. I've had my hand up for a bit on the screen. I don't know whether it's showing or not.
Not on mine, Councillor. Sorry, apologies.
Okay, no, it's shown on mine, but not to worry. You've probably maybe gone past where I was going to jump in. I think it was on, I'm not sure it's page 22 or page 27, something in 27, 120.
Yeah, something of 127, I suppose.
Yeah, it's about driver training anyway on 12.6.
Yep.
Which it says it's required to undertake training where council considers reasonably necessary to promote the objectives of the policy, which is including equality, diversity, safeguarding child sexual exploitation. I'm wondering how this is going to be arranged and how you're going to be able to see proof of completion of the training.
Do you want me to take that one, Rob?
Yeah, you take that, so because people will be bored of me.
Okay. We have identified a third-party provider who can do the training for us. It's Blue Lamp Trust, who currently do our driving assessments and our wheelchair assessments. They did put together some face-to-face learning. Obviously, that's not suitable under COVID, so they've put together an e-learning package that is available to the drivers. So what we would do is we would provide them the log-on details. The driver would log on, complete the training. Blue Lamp Trust then gives them a test. It's a multiple choice test, and they send the results of that test directly to us in licensing with a completion certificate. So we'll be using Blue Lamp Trust for the safeguarding and the disability awareness training. And when we can move back to doing face-to-face training, we'll be sending drivers down to their setup in Southampton to do the face-to-face training.
Thank you, Sophie.
No worries.
Can I just add in here that this was the style training that I've used in my previous authorities. It is very, very good. And it both highlights to the drivers not just the vulnerability of their passengers and how they need to look after them, but also the vulnerability of the drivers and how they need to look after themselves, because effectively they are lone workers and they are vulnerable. So there's a whole load here. And just to sort of quote you on this, one of the drivers that I put through on my previous thing actually spotted a passenger, young child in the back, or a child in the back of the car, who had been groomed by a paedophile online, and was being they were taking them to the train station. The driver picked up the warning signs, got to the train station, called the police, and the police met the nice middle-aged man who apparently was another boy in his online presence at the station, all thanks to the reporting done by the driver who'd had his awareness raised by the training that was offered. So this can and does make a real impact on people's lives and safeguarding. I really strongly recommend this to you. Okay, so clarification on the investigation of complaints. Again, this is not going to revolutionize our standard practice. Really, it's just good practice, follows our standard enforcement and discipline procedures. So there's no great shift for there. Okay, so that brings us then back onto the things that, so those are the things that DFT wishes to bring in, and as I'm sure you can see, there's nothing much there that anybody is going to object to. The trade will be probably a little bit less happy about the 6 monthly DBS, but actually that doesn't cost them anything. It will cost us some officer time, but not a cost there. Right, things that we're bringing in. The penalty points scheme. I've talked to you about penalty points before. DFT wish to bring them in. I wish to bring them in. Sophie wishes to bring them in. They offer us another tier of enforcement that allows officers to add penalty points to drivers driving, their taxi licenses. It's not their driving licenses. This has nothing to do with the DVLA, although the system is basically the same. It is set out rather strangely twice in your policy, and I'm sure you want to have a quick look. So page 144 and 145 in your policy, which isn't overtyped. So basically it works in a very similar way to your DVLA one. You can accrue up to 12 penalty points in any 12-month period. If you reach the magic number, then they get to make an appearance before a subcommittee. So it's not that it's 12 points and you're out. It's 12 points and you sit before the subcommittee, and the subcommittee will decide whether you remain a fit and proper person. Okay, so there's no instant justice here. It's not that licensing officers can add points willy-nilly just because they don't like a driver, like we've been alleged in the past. This is about us putting drivers in front of your good selves for you to make a judgment. If you feel the points were not warranted, then it is your opportunity to dismiss those points and send them back in. If, however, you feel that the licensing officers have behaved correctly and brought it to your attention correctly, then it is yours for some justice on the driver, whether that be education, suspension, revocation, whatever, all the powers that you usually have. It's a fairly comprehensive list of varying things there. You can see that it applies equally to hackney carriage, private hire, and private hire operators. So there are offences there for private hire operators, such as not recording the correct information, for example. Some of them seem to have quite low amounts of points, and that's because some drivers are a little bit careless, he said delicately. So you might give them a 4-point penalty with a view that they don't do it again. If they've managed to get to 3 of those offences, then they're not paying much attention to us, and at which point they have the opportunity to listen to the panel, the committee, subcommittee, I should say. Any questions on the penalty point scheme before I move on? Oh, lots of hands. Councillor Jones, you were the quickest.
Thank you. Just on just how the points all works out, because charging more than just, what's displayed as the fare seems quite it's only 4 penalty points, and and that to me should be higher. And I just wondered how you worked it out how did you work it out basically? Because if someone overcharged, it's especially if it's displayed, it's pretty bad, I would say personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're set there. They're largely set based on my experience of doing it in other authorities, Councillor Jones. Don't get me wrong, I'm not wedded to any of these. If councillors feel that some of them are too strong or too weak, there is obviously this is the consultation document. Yeah. And if we feel that these need tweaking, then they can be tweaked. Yeah.
Only thing I would say after we've run this for a period of time is to review it.
Yes.
As a thing, that would be mine.
Well, any taxi policy is a live document, as you know. They have a finite life. I mean, we're looking at reviewing this one. I think we've only had it in 2 years, so this is, we're already...
October 2018. This one came in.
There you go. So exactly 2 years. So, you know, it's, you know, it is live and we can change it.
Right.
Councillor Vo.
Hi, thank you very much. Just looking at the list, there's two things that come to mind. One is, how do we help people who are using taxis and private operators to understand what should be there? I mean, as somebody who's used Hackney cabs and private car operators, you know, I have no idea what I should be able to see in that cab. So, for example, I can remember taking a Hackney cab, and he was displaying some kind of license thing in it that was thoroughly out of date. I wouldn't have known where to have or how to have reported that. So I would be interested in your views about how we inform the public to enable them to be aware of what should be there. And then I was just wanting to get your views about, there was one here, number 6, using a licensed vehicle without a valid compliance certificate. Does that mean that they literally do not have a valid compliance certificate, in which case surely that somebody, it's more than 6 points, you shouldn't be operating, or is it that they're not displaying a valid license? Anyway, I just wanted to understand that.
Two very good questions.
Do you want me to take that, Rob?
Oh, go on, so.
The next bit down on the changes we're bringing into the policy, Councillor, covers improved signage in the licensed vehicles to display how a complaint should be made, which is new that we're bringing in. So along with how payments can be accepted by that vehicle, there should also be a sign in there saying, if you have a complaint about this vehicle, please contact the council. So that is one of the changes we are bringing in under this policy, and it will come up again in the licensing shared service update that's coming up next. Regarding the valid compliance certificate, what we sometimes find that a driver might have a expired compliance certificate. Now, if the compliance certificate is expired, then their vehicle will be suspended. So they will be suspended and given 6 points until they can provide a valid compliance certificate. And obviously, if they do that more than once, then they'll be in front of yourselves and they'll have had their vehicle suspended twice.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Can I just quickly follow up, Chairs? I'm just doing. So the complaint one, you know, I absolutely get that, and that's really, really good. But people may not know what should be in that vehicle. You know, what information, because this list is quite a good list, isn't it? I mean, if you can pick out some of the things in there which are, you know, about license plates and should they have something on their uniform or whatever. So it's more about how we understand as members of the public what should be there. I mean, it's not an easy question to answer. I'm not saying there's an easy answer, but I'm just intrigued about thoughts you might have about helping the public.
But the vehicles are tested regularly, aren't they?
Yes, that everything that is there should be there. I mean, it's great to have something about how this is you complain, but if we don't know what we should be complaining about, do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do find, Councillor, that members of the public are not reticent in making complaints to the council about taxis. So any little thing they do get in contact with us about, although I do appreciate that they might not realise that a driver should be wearing their badge. That is something that might only be known to licensing. There are going to be enhanced security features, again, in the shared service update for the vehicles, which is something that we would have to do a comms exercise around to make sure the public were aware that this feature is now on the vehicle. So we could include something along the Stay Safe campaign that was done a couple of years ago, saying make sure you're getting in a licensed vehicle, make sure they've got the right livery, make sure the driver's wearing their badge.
Thank you. That sounds pretty good.
And I'd also like to say in there, Councillor, that you know, the people who tend to award these points tend to be the licensing officers when we're doing rank inspections and just bimbling out and doing our normal enforcement work. And also when the compliance centres spot these things, then obviously they have an opportunity as well. You know, if vehicles are seen. And the greatest source of information on drivers about is other drivers. who of course know exactly what they should or shouldn't be doing, and are more than happy to dob in anybody who isn't meeting the standard that they feel they should apply. As I say, they're always like kids in a playground. They like to get away with everything, but they hate the thought of anybody else getting away with anything. Most of our source of intel is just other drivers who are obviously generally fairly well educated. Councillor Gardner.
Is there anything on the council website on how to complain about a taxi driver or a taxi and what to complain about?
Yep, there is a link to say complain about a licensed service, or people can contact the licensing team directly. We have a page on staying safe in taxis, which covers, again, it's a Stay Safe campaign that I think was done in maybe 2014 or 2015. So there is information available, but I should imagine we need to update it, and we certainly will when the new policy comes in.
Councillor Robinson, have you got your hand up? It's sort of
it's
in your picture. Sorry, it keeps flicking in and out, and I don't.
Thank you, Rob. Two things. One, to add support to what Councillor Jones said about the penalty points for overcharging. I think that should be a harsher penalty than 4. I don't think you should be allowed to get away with it 3 times. Twice will be more than enough. The other thing, is there a facility, if a driver gets 4 points for some misdemeanor, and it's his first 4 points he's had, is there a facility for him to appeal at that point when he gets the first 4 points, or can he only appeal at the end when he's committed 3 offences and has got 12 points? If I get done for speeding tomorrow and get first 3 points, I can opt to go to court immediately, long time before I accrue 12. Is the same facility available to a driver with this system?
Yeah, so basically what would happen would be that the points will be awarded by one of Sophie's team as a licensing officer. They would talk to Sophie as the licensing team leader and say, right, I want to issue these points. Sophie would say yay or nay to that. After that, the driver can appeal back to me as the regulatory services manager. So it's an officer appeal in the first instance. Yeah, and I would review the decision taken by the licensing team in my regulatory services manager role. Yeah. If they then object to that, then yes, their next port of call would be your good selves. However,
that's
the caveat, as I always give them, is it's a bit like appealing to the court. If you decide to take your 3 points and roll over, that's okay. If you appeal to the court and the judge doesn't like you very much, then the judge may decide to impose a far stiffer penalty on you than you might have originally had.
Yeah. But the option is there if they're really aggrieved. That's the main thing.
There's always the option, yeah. But obviously that I would dissuade them from that, because obviously your time is valuable, or the officer's time is valuable, etc., etc. But yes, if they feel immensely aggrieved, then that's the result is always back to you as councillors.
Fine.
If they don't like that, then they can go to the MAGs.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any other questions to
Councillor
officers?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Flynn. As a Councillor Putty first.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the one that we have got about residency outside the UK, it says here that the applicant should have spent 6 months, continuous months or more overseas. Will need to, and the council will need to see evidence. But what happens if somebody just goes to like Spain and the next day commits a shoplifting crime, you see, overseas? So that just within the next day it happens. So he comes back and apply for a license here. What is the procedure now?
Well, Yeah, the guidance from the Home Office, Councillor Putty, is that we only need to do a criminal record check on somebody who has lived outside of the country for 6 months or more. So unfortunately, if somebody goes to Magaluf on holiday and commits a crime, we're unlikely to see that unless it is then reported back to the British police and goes on their British record.
Bearing in mind, Councillor, that we do have there's an increasing number of agreements. How Brexit will affect this going forward, I'm not quite sure. But we do have increasing numbers of direct links from European countries and countries outside of Europe for information sharing. And that's certainly something that's happened more in recent years. Councillor Phillimore, sorry, apologies for the delay in getting to you.
That's all right, Rob. Cheers, mate. My question is, as opposed to DVLA, a licence holder gets his slate white clean every 12 months.
Correct.
But do you keep any historic record of repeat offenders as regard to that?
Yes. So effectively, it stays on the driver's record. Yeah, that doesn't go away. But for the points accrual purposes, yeah, it stays there. And if we have somebody, you know, it doesn't supersede the fit and proper person test. You know, if we've got somebody who is persistently low level problem, yeah, you know, the points there are not sacrosanct. If drivers feel that, you know, Fred Bloggs has been a pain over the last 2 years and done lots of small things, even though he or she may have missed out on the 12 points in 12 months, you know, it doesn't take away our powers for under the fit and proper person. Yeah, it's just a simpler, more transparent way of firing a quick warning shot across drivers' bows in the first instance. It's very clear, it's very open, and you know, if they've got 6 points, they're going to have to keep their eye out, just like the rest of us. If we've got 9 points in our driving license for speeding, we're probably going to have a quiet year.
Councillor Gardner.
Well, I assume if we had a repeat offender who came back year after year, this is where we would be looking to take away his licence anyway.
Correct. Yeah, it just offers us a slightly more flexible mechanism as officers, yeah, and a more transparent route to putting people through to a subcommittee for you guys, and you would then see their history anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've used it before in my previous authorities, and whilst there was initial resistance, actually after a while the drivers quite like it because it is very transparent, it's very clear, and you know, and once they see that it is administered by yourselves as the committee at the end of the day, and that it's not some arbitrary whim of drivers, then they're much more comfortable with it.
Any more questions to officers? Debate?
Okay, right, I'll just rattle through the last couple then. Yeah, so further signage, that's the big one. This is something we're looking to bring in. So to get Councillor Vaux's point, yes, there will be a document that tells you how to complain about your driver. There will be an internal badge, so which isn't displayed on the driver. Yeah, so in addition to the one round their neck, and importantly, a sign on the outside of the vehicle that tells passengers what payment methods are accepted by that driver. So we get away from the issue we've had, but mainly on the Hackney carriage rank, of people approaching the driver saying, right, you know, I'd like to do what's effectively a fairly short run, and then saying, oh yeah, and I want to pay by card. And suddenly at that point in time, oh, the driver doesn't take a card because there may be a small card fee, transaction fee, that they don't want to pay, and on a short journey they don't think it's worthwhile. So it's a little bit of just keeping the drivers honest. We can't force drivers to take cards, there's no mechanism for that, but most of them do these days, but we do have a little bit of recidivism occasionally on the rank, particularly for short runs. and this would go some way to alleviating that. Likewise, if drivers don't want to take a particular type of card, say, I don't know, American Express or Monzo or something like that, again, they can display that so that there's no issue about them getting to the end of the journey, the driver or the passenger pulling out their Monzo card, and then drivers going, don't take that. Yeah. So it's really just about being a bit transparent. And the last one there, what about maintaining a list of wheelchair accessible vehicles? That's just going to add on to our public register. That's very simple and straightforward. And details of CCTV and body worn video. And this is a new one for us. We've had a couple of drivers who've decided that they wish to do body worn video, which is interesting, shall we say, from a whole level. For us, obviously, we use body worn video for our CSPs and CSPOs and our civil enforcement officers. And obviously, we do that in a very structured and organized manner, because obviously it's quite intrusive. It is literally in your face. Whereas some of the drivers perhaps aren't quite so well set up and therefore compliant as they might otherwise be. So this just puts some structure in around that. Councillor Putty, is that a hand or are you just waving?
Yes, yes, Robert. Yeah, with recording, is that encrypted all the time? And the body cam, how it is going to be, and the data protection on that?
So
that's the guidance that we have now put into our policy. So we've used the guidance from the ICO around body worn video and have said that they can only use body worn video that comply with things around encryption. The body worn video device has to be PIN activated only. So if they lost it, nobody can then access the data on there, and it has to be destroyed after a certain amount of time.
Yeah. So yes, if you get recorded shouting at one of my civil enforcement officers because we've just given you a ticket, then all of that is automatically encrypted, and it's only downloadable by somebody who's got administrator rights, etc., etc. So we're confident that we fully comply with the ICO regulations. We weren't so confident that the drivers were. So this tightens up that and gives some more guidance on that area. Okay.
Any other questions? Councillor Gardner.
Question for Robert. I'm happy with the report as it stands, but is there anything there if it requires a decision by the committee?
No, this is just, unless you feel very strongly that you don't want it to go out to consultation in this form, and I gather there might be some feedback on the number of points in the penalty points, but we can pick that up through the consultation process. What you're being asked to decide on is, are you happy for this to go out to consultation?
And I'm happy to move the report.
Second that.
Yeah. Agreed.
All those in favour, please show. If you can. Yeah. Okay, that seems like everybody.
Marvellous. Well, I'm happy.
Yes, thank you very much. My apologies for not getting in. I've had to use another computer to get in because I got locked out. However, moving on, licensed shared services update.
I'm going to hand over to my esteemed colleague, Ms. Brough. Yeah.
Ms. Brough, yes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillors, apologies also for my late arrival and the fact that I'm dialing in and you can't see me. The licensing shared service update, this is just for your information. We haven't seen each other in a while, so I just wanted to give you an update on the work of the licensing team during the lockdown. So as you know, we went into the first lockdown on the 23rd of March, and this had a huge effect on our licensed trade, the premises and the taxis. So it's drastically reduced income for both our trade and our premises. To try and help with that, for our taxi trade, we have offered them split fees. So when they come to pay for their renewals, they have been allowed to pay it in 2 instalments, half 50% each. This is going to be in place until the 13th of December. And we will take a view on the fact that we're just about to go into another lockdown, whether or not that needs to be extended. Medicals, so as you know, all of our drivers have to meet DVLA Group 2 standards. Unfortunately, during the lockdown, GPs were only doing emergency cases, and a lot of them have moved away since from doing routine appointments such as medicals. For all our drivers that had to have a medical done during lockdown, they have signed a declaration to say that there hasn't been a change in their medical status, and they are now getting through their medicals. Like I said, a number of GP surgeries have moved away from doing the medicals entirely, so we are looking at a third-party provider who provides GPs basically to do DVLA quality medicals. We've got one driver piloting it for us at the moment, and if we do decide to go with this company, then we will let you know. The benefits are the drivers can get straight in front of a GP with a copy of their medical history to have their medical done. It's a little bit cheaper than GP surgeries, and like I said, the surgeries seem to be not doing it anymore. During lockdown, we had some new legislation come in. The Business and Planning Act, that came in on the 22nd of July and will be in place until the 30th of September 2021. I sent round a briefing note on it, but just to go over it again quickly, the BPA allowed off sales for any premises that already has on sales, which meant they could provide a drink in an open container for you to walk off the premises with up until 11 o'clock at night. The other provision under this was the cheaper and quicker tables and chairs consent, which allowed you to get a tables and chairs application in through a consultation in 5 working days, and then granted in another 5 working days, which is much quicker than our usual standard of 28 days. And the price is also much reduced. It's only £100 compared to 210, which is our current price for it. To date, we've only had 2 applications for the tables and chairs provision, so there's only 2 out there with this at the moment. And as far as we know, none of our licensed premises have taken up the off-sales provision. If they do take it up, they have to provide signage to say that they are doing it. And in our inspections, we've not found any. Obviously, with the numerous changes to the COVID regulations, the licensing team has been very busy working with environmental health and the economic development team to provide guidance to our businesses and our premises about what they can and cannot do. We've also been very active with the events team, putting together guidance for anybody who wants to do events. Obviously, this is all about to change again, so we wait with bated breath for the official guidance that's going to come out at the end of the week after the vote on Wednesday. But we have already seen an increase today in inquiries from our licensed premises about how they can operate.
So, do you want to pause there because we've got
Councillor Westbrook, then sorry, not Councillor Westbrook, Councillor Phillimore, then Councillor Westbrook.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. Whilst I totally support the reduction in the fees for table and chairs, and I don't think you'll probably get any coming through the winter too much anyway, because you've stated that there's a reduction in this sector, which is being massively affected, and some of these premises, whilst they've had rates relief, are still getting charged rents by the pubcos, etc. Do we believe that it's really necessary to charge £89 for a variation in the licence for off sales?
The licensing act fees are set by central government, so we don't have any say on how much those cost. Like I said, under the BPA, they have until the 30th of September to have the off sales without having to vary their licence. So that's just an automatic provision. A number of premises had already done a minor variation to change their licence to bring in off sales so that they could do deliveries before the BPA came in. And like I said, since the BPA has come in, I don't know of any premises that are taking it up that don't already have off sales on their licence.
Okay, Councillor Westbrook.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Sophie. Just a couple of brief questions. One picks up on license conditions 8 on page 195, which is in reference really to the tables and chairs on the pavements outside like applications. It talks about placing of speakers and any other equipment not is strictly prohibited. I wondered whether or not if people are going to start to use outside seating. I have seen it in Europe. I don't know whether they do it here, of having patio heaters and the like outside for people to sit and drink coffee and things. And I wondered if that was the case. I haven't seen any, but it could be well be that could be something. I couldn't find anything in here to say whether that would be allowed or not. And my second point was on, which I don't know whether we've covered, that was about the adhesive plates, which is further back in the document, which talks about, and what I was going to ask about, it's obviously making things a lot easier, but are there any disadvantages, and is it easier to counterfeit those? I do notice it says that there's additional security features will be available. I wonder what they might be, and if that's going to be an easier thing to counterfeit. And that's my two questions.
So the adhesive plates I'll come on to next. The question around patio heaters, the reason we've got that condition about speakers is to avoid any noise nuisance for neighbours of the premises that have that. We wouldn't cover patio heaters under any of the licensing objectives. I don't think they would come under a noise nuisance or anything like that. It isn't something we would really regulate unless there were concerns about the safety of the heater. But again, that would probably end up going to one of the EH teams rather than us in licensing.
Thank you. And I'll wait for the adhesive one in a minute.
Okay. Are there any more questions on the new legislation or any of the other topics I've covered so far?
Yes.
Rob, you'll have to let me know if there's any questions.
Councillor Gardner, then Councillor Taylor.
Quick question. On the medicals being done privately, are we picking up the cost of that, or is that being passed on?
Drivers have to pay for their own medicals. The third-party company that we're looking at is actually cheaper than a number of the surgeries that drivers have been going to. Surgeries tend to come in at about anywhere between £100 and £130, and I believe this third-party company is under £70.
Councillor Taylor.
You're on mute, Councillor Taylor.
Oh, I thought it was me.
Sorry, I'll start again. Sorry, it's just a quick one on the fees. Regarding, I know one driver personally who lost 18 weeks due to the coronavirus, and since he's gone back to driving, he's only at 50% of his normal wage. Is there any way that we can support the drivers with a reduction of the fees?
We will be looking at our fees in the next couple of months. Obviously, with the adhesive plates, there will be a reduction there. And hopefully with things like the cheaper medical process, that would help them as well.
Okay, because then I know a lot of the drivers are self-employed and they're losing a lot of money, and a little bit will help them out quite substantially. So any help would be greatly received.
Sorry.
I can safely say, Councillor Taylor, that we're not insensitive to the arrangement with the drivers, which is why we've looked to split the fees back originally, and we certainly split those. In the case of the driver's driving license fee, which is over a 3-year, we've put the fees back by a year for them. So we've effectively we've supported that quite heavily. We can't do too much with the vehicle fee. We only charge what it costs us. So we don't make a profit on it. We're not allowed by law to make a profit on it to start with. So if we reduce the fees, then effectively you're right. We are having to, as an authority, to subsidise those licenses. Yeah. Now that's not illegal. We can charge less than the cost, if you like. But we don't make a profit anyway, so we're not profiteering here from the driver's perspective. I would I think it's difficult to say whether we should or should not support them financially because of the nature of the cycle of these. There'll be some drivers who may have not paid any money out at all for fees at this point in time. And other drivers, if their badge and their plate fell very close together in the middle of COVID, they could have been reasonably hard hit at that point in time. So I don't, there's no magic bullet here. All sectors of the economy have been hard hit. It's just the same with our licensed premises. Yeah, who have to pay their license fee whether they're trading or not. You know, in this case, nobody has stopped the taxi drivers trading. I know that their business may have fallen off markedly, but in the case of a lot of our licensed premises, they've just been stopped. You know, as from Thursday, they won't be trading. Yeah, no matter how much money they've paid, how big or small they are, they're not trading at all. So if we start to support some members of the licensed community, I fear that that may very much open the floodgates for us. I appreciate that obviously drivers are generally one-man bands, you know, and the individual impact on them can be severe. But there's plenty of sole traders out there who are also licensed for the sale of alcohol or whatever.
Thank you very much. Councillor Vaux.
Thank you. I'm interested in the adhesive side too, so I'll wait. Thanks.
Okay. Right. Back to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the adhesive plates. The licensing team has been exploring options to provide adhesive plates. These are to be printed by a third-party provider who currently does vinyl printing for places like BT and the Post Office. They've also started printing plates for a number of other councils. The main benefits of this is it will be cheaper to produce these, so that saving can be passed on to the drivers. It also takes away some of the administration for the licensing team because they no longer have to print that. It can be done remotely, which would be a great help for making sure my team can work from home if they need to. We could just send the information to the company. They put it through their printing process. They also post the vehicle plates and the badges directly to the customer, so directly to the driver. The additional security features, which I know we've already had questions about. So the plates will be produced with a specific hologram on them. Obviously, it's very hard to duplicate a hologram, and obviously we know what it will look like. There will also be a QR code on the plate. And what this allows a customer to do is to scan the plate, and they'll be able to see information about who licenses the vehicle and whether or not all the MOT and the licenses are all in date. Obviously, if it's just a photocopy of this, if someone scans it and it doesn't come up with a code, then it will be a counterfeit one. Licensing officers will get an additional screen that will come up when they scan the QR code, which will tell us if the driver's badge is in date, if the driver in that vehicle are linked in our system, and if things like the COC are still in date. This company can also print our badges for us, so the credit card badges that the drivers wear on their person, and the larger badges that are now going to be put in the vehicle, which will hold information on the driver's photo and the driver's license number. So basically everything's already on the badge will be available for a customer to see. This badge will have to be mounted in the vehicle where the customer can see it. So if a customer does have a complaint about a driver, when they contact us, they'll be able to hopefully give us a bit more information than it was a white male in his 50s, which covers quite a few of our taxi drivers. This will also have the information on about if you want to make a complaint about this journey, please contact the licensing team. We are just finalising some details with the company around the data transfer and the work procedures. And once this has been finalised along with the final graphics, then the trade's going to be informed via a newsletter, and I can let the committee know as well what the final look of the plates is going to be. The colour scheme will still remain the same. It will still have the Basingstoke and Dean logo on it, so people aren't going to be too surprised about the change in plates. Also, the adhesive plates can be attached to the vehicle without having to drill holes in the vehicle to mount the bracket, which I'm sure a number of our drivers will be very pleased about. Are there any specific questions on the plates?
Yes, Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Sophie. That's very interesting. Well, I think I might have misunderstood. So, will these license adhesive plates be external? And if they are, I mean, how difficult is it for somebody just to pick it off and put it somewhere else?
So they are the external plates. So the plate that's currently held on the back of the vehicle, which has its license number and registration, and the fact that it's licensed by Basingstoke and Dean. So these plates will replace those plates. Once you put them on the vehicle, if you take them off, they'll be destroyed. So you can't then go and put them on another vehicle. And the company that do it, again, they do all the vinyling for Post Office. So they're using their 5-year vinyl, which we'll obviously be replacing every year for our vehicles. So that it's quite a hard wearing sticker. So it's not going to fade. It's not going to peel off the car. And like I said, if someone does pick it off, it'll be warped and destroyed. They won't be able to stick it on another vehicle.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? No. Anything else on that one, Sophie?
Councillor Taylor wants
no.
to speak. Councillor Lee.
Oh, right, Councillor Taylor, I can see you. Where are you? Oh, there.
Sorry, I didn't want to speak.
You didn't?
Sorry, Mark. I thought you were waving.
Well,
My apologies, my apologies, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else on that, Sophie?
No, I'll just finish off by saying the licensing team have been out on enforcement with both the police licensing officers, environmental health and the CSPOs. We've been out every time there's been a big change in guidelines, so the 4th of July and the 26th of September. For the most part, the premises in Basingstoke and Dean have been complying with the legislation that's out at the time. We'll wait and see what further legislation brings. We have had some complaints about premises not complying with the COVID regulations, but those have been dealt with quite quickly with the help of environmental health.
Okay, thank you very much. So the report is to note, is it?
Yeah, it's just for your information.
Thank you very much. Right, draft animal welfare policy consultation. Back to you, and Sophie.
Councillor Lee, I think Councillor Gardner wishes to speak.
Roger Gardner, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, before we go on page 190 for hearings, there's a hearing coming up regarding Plush. What is the situation with training at the moment? Because obviously there hasn't been any training this year, and I certainly haven't been trained for the previous year, so my training's out of date. Are you happy with the training situation?
I can safely say that any councillor at the moment, as provided we've got enough councillors to sit for quorum for the 3, we're okay for our statutory provision, Councillor Gardner. If there is a shortage of trained councillors or we need to undertake training, then obviously I've delivered that in the past, and I can deliver that fairly short notice or on an individual basis to councillors if that's required. I think I've probably trained at some point just about everybody in this room, or the virtual room, should we say. So all of you have had that pain, suffering, misery and torment. And I'm happy to inflict it on anybody else again. If you feel that you need some quality time with me, then I'm more than welcome to do that. Failing that, I'm sure that Ellie will organise something kind of on a more group basis to ensure that we're up to speed.
So that could be a thing for COVID, couldn't it, when you're all locked down?
Well, I'm happy to deliver it in this forum if that's a little bit safer for everybody. They don't have to be in the room with me there.
Okay, moving on. draft animal welfare policy.
Now, this is definitely a
Thank you, Sarah.
Sophie one.
So the animal welfare policy that we have to consider is following the introduction of the animal welfare regulations in 2018. So the licensing team took on further licensing functions with the animal activity licensing. So we've seen quite a significant increase in the number of animal welfare licenses that we have issued. So the changes in 2018, if you can cast your mind back to a November 2018 committee meeting where my colleague Karen Hill brought a report to you about all the licensing, the new licenses we're going to be taking on, such as animal exhibition, including our normal ones of riding establishments, boarding establishments, dog daycare, pet selling and dog breeders. I've put a table in the report at 3.2 just to show you how many we had on the 1st of October under the previous legislation and how many we had as of the 1st of October of this year. So across the board, we've had an increase apart from the loss of one riding establishment. But our riding establishments weren't big. I think there was only about 2 or 3 ponies at each. So we've also had an increase in complaints that was been received by the licensing team on unlicensed activity. Something that we have seen quite a lot of during COVID is people diversifying their businesses. So anybody who does animal related activity that's not currently licensed, such as dog walking and grooming, a number of them seem to have branched into dog boarding. So we've had an increase in inquiries and applications that way. The policy has been put together to obviously collate all the legislation that we're working under, to describe the application process, how we inspect, how we issue licenses, and our approach to enforcement. It's heavily based on the DEFRA guidance that was brought out about a year ago on animal welfare policies, and it's not shockingly different from any other animal welfare policies that have come in. It doesn't really cover anything too controversial. Like I said, it follows DEFRA guidelines almost to the letter. And when we go live with this policy, as long as everybody's happy for it to go out to consultation, we will also do a common strategy for animal welfare licensing. We've done the first one with Laura Yeats, the dog warden, on what you need an animal welfare license for. I don't know if you've seen that on YouTube. Laura was very proud to tell me the other day that it's had 1,000 views. So we will follow that up with a newsletter to some of the local parishes. That was only a very quick run through it. Does anybody have any specific questions?
I had a question beforehand. I asked you the pre-meeting, outstanding application.
Yep. So we had, as of the 1st of October, we had 12. 4 of those have been granted, but we now have 13. Like I said, we've had an increase in inquiries and interest in it, and obviously now that we're covering more of the more areas like animal exhibition, then we're getting more in.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Westbrook.
Thank you. That's such an option, really, Sophie, because you actually picked up on the point about dog walkers going into more sort of boarding and daycare. That was one of my questions, because it's pretty apparent to me through the summer that I know that a lot of dog walkers they go out to parks to let the dogs off, but they also transport the animals into vans and need to be watered and fed. And if it's a hot day, we had a really hot summer. Where does the licensing part of that stand? Because I guess they're unlicensed as such. I don't know how that works, because obviously when you go into care, I get that. But, you know, there's quite a few of these businesses popping up now in Basingstoke.
So dog walking isn't licensed at all. Nowhere licensed it. The person to deal with complaints about dog walkers is our dog warden, Laura. So she deals with any concerns that are raised about people not being able to control dogs on or off the lead or anything like that. The only thing that ever really comes into play on dog walking is the insurance. So insurance policies limit how many dogs you can walk at a time. But that's about it. Unfortunately, it's not been picked up in the legislation that came out in 2018, and DEFRA has remained quite silent on the matter.
Yeah, I'm surprised because, as I say, I think when it comes to animal welfare, there's quite a number of dogs transported around these quite small vans, really. Thanks anyway. Sally.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Putty.
Oh, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, with regards to dog walkers and the transportation of dogs and the number of dogs that somebody can really, my park, my woodland park in Beggarwood is one of the areas where quite a lot of these dog walkers actually come. And I have, so how many dogs do these people have to have? Because I have seen multitude of dogs by one person who's been let free.
I'm not the expert on that matter. I'd have to ask Laura Yates. I believe insurance lets you have up to 6 dogs at a time.
Oh, truth. Councillor Gardner.
Oh, sorry.
With multiple dogs being walked from different households, is there a COVID risk?
Yes, that's one of the questions we've had today, along with groomers. Rob, do you want to take the lead on that one, as you answered that earlier?
Thanks for that, Sophie. Yes, I was like a good dog grooming question.
It was good, wasn't it?
It was. Cheers my day up. Yeah. So basically, the issue here is they've done a bit of research on this actually, and there is very low risk of transmission of COVID virus on the animal itself. Right at the start of things, we had people spraying down dogs and wiping them down with all sorts of things that dogs then licked off their coats and ingested, which isn't very good for them. And following that, there was a bit of research done that said that transmission was actually very, very, very low, which surprised me. So as provided they hand over at the gate sort of thing, and you know, that seems to be pretty much the standard, you know, and the person doesn't go into the house, then the risk actually is fairly low, Councillor Gardner. Yeah, I mean, it's just unregulated, and we've got no power to do that. And even if we did have the power to do it, we just wouldn't have the resources to go out there and hunt down every dog walker and just check that they were doing the right thing, quite frankly. We got enough trouble, as Sophie said, just processing the number of groomers who've turned into boarders and all the rest of it. It has been a real growth industry over the pandemic, I'm afraid to say. We are slowly catching up with it, but of course the problem we have as an enforcement team is that by definition we have to go out and inspect. And again, that's something that people aren't often very happy about, having some strange person tramping around their premises and looking at it, and sometimes making multiple visits to assess these things. So it's not been an easy time.
Any other questions? Councillor Tony Jones.
Yeah, it's not about policy, but while we're on dog wardens, we do have a major problem in Basingstoke with fouling. And I wonder when we could, well, I suppose it wouldn't come under this committee, but should we be getting a paper on how we're going to deal with it? I know the dog warden, I know very well, she's very good at her job, but she seems to be the only one that, I don't know how many we got, but at one time we only had her. I don't know how many dog wardens we got. We've got a huge borough. And as you were saying, the principle now, there seems to be these people walking dogs. Do they pick up? Don't they pick up? Where I live in Kempshire in particular, and Buckskin, we're finding quite a few problems where people aren't picking up. And I wonder whether we could look at it, whether it's this committee or another committee at some stage, but it comes under yourself, Robert, and just something we should be looking at.
I understand that Environmental Health are part their way through a consultation on a public space protection order, borough-wide one, that focuses on dog fouling.
Yeah, and just to reinforce that, that was the point I was about to make. In fact, I was looking at the papers today. That will also bring in the requirement for anybody walking the dog to have the correct equipment to pick up said poop. So if you're out and about with your pooch, the officer will be able to ask you, do you have your poop scoop or your bag with you? And failing to have that will also be an offence. So you know, that will hopefully focus people's minds a little, because obviously in the past we've you know, the issue is you stood there with the dog and the dog's looking at you, you're looking at the dog, and it's not doing anything very much, and you don't know that if it does its business whether the owner has the correct equipment to clear up, you know, because some people just don't care and walk out with the lead, the dog, and that's it. But that
Councillor Putty.
Thanks, Chairman. What guidance have we got for the public? Because there are a lot of public, like even for myself, when I'm walking, I see that a dog has done its business and the owner just walks away from it, you see. But what can the public, what sort of guidance can we give the public as to what to do? Because I cannot approach the owner and say, look, you can you pick up your poop, you see? So it's just difficult for the public really how to really relate to that.
It's not a licensing issue, is it?
Yeah,
it's a moral issue.
It's something that environmental health will deal with.
Yeah, it's a moral issue.
Can I just add in there also, Councillor Jones, that the people who primarily deal with most of our dog fouling are actually our CSPO team. So it's not all Laura. The CSPO team will be the ones who will be out there issuing fixed penalty notices for people who are failing or not carrying the right equipment to clear up. Obviously, we've got considerably more of those than we have Laura's.
Any other questions? To note it. Did Councillor Faulkner, did you deal in an urgent matter?
Yes, we did, Chair, and Councillor Vogt was elected as Vice Chair as from the end of this meeting.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the work you did tonight. My apologies, I just couldn't get on, and I then eventually got locked out, so I had to go and use another computer. With that, I think that's the end of the meeting. To thank you all and stay safe.
Before you do that, Councillor Leake, are the committee happy to proceed with going out to consultation on the animal welfare policy?
All in favour, please show. I think everybody's showing yes. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, everybody, and stay safe.
Could we just thank the licensing team for all the work they've been doing through lockdown and, you know, all the changes. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Thank you.
I think it's being dealt daily with all the changes, isn't it? Certainly with licensing.
Feels like that some days.